Okay, alrighty. Right there. If it falls over, pull it back up.
Okay. Yeah, I'm starting with one for myself. I want to buy
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to this global session. I'm Wonca of Harlem University Sacred Heart Hospital, and I'm going to be in the chair for this session. I'd like to introduce Dr. Carl Hertbeck. It's a very impressive CV. I will introduce all of this CV. Carl Hertbeck has been serving as the officer in charge of the Yongsan Surgery Centered Medical Home since January 2017. The Uniformed Service University Medical School in Bethesda, where he graduated with an MD degree. He completed his family medicine residency at FT Prep, where he served as the research champion, which led to his residency receiving top honors in scholarly activity across the entire DoD for 2 consecutive years, as well as recognition from the Army Surgeon General. And he served 3 years with the 8-2D Combat Aviation Brigade. During this time, he also obtained a Master in Business Administration as well as a Master of Science in Leadership. And then he moved to Korea, where he currently serves as the OIC for Yongsan SEMH 1RC K16 Clinic and Suwon Clinics. He earned many medals and ribbons, and he executes duties as the chair for Wonca Polaris, North America's new and future family physician movement, leading this court in over 30 countries, including the US, Canada, and the Caribbean. Hertbeck works on the editorial board of 3 family medicine journals, as well as an assistant professor at the Uniformed Services University. He's presented more than 60 lectures on military medicine, global health, leadership, and medical education in 3 languages across more than 30 countries. So it's a great pleasure for us to have Dr. Hedbeck speak to us on this subject, the global #1 word for family medicine product. I'm sure that Dr. Hedbeck's special presentation this morning will be highly interesting to us. I would like to call on him to deliver his presentation. Dr. Hedbeck.
Thank you for that nice introduction. So yes, 3 languages, but one of them unfortunately is not Korean, so this will be in English today. Thank you all for understanding. So I was asked to give a talk about one of our projects, but I wanted to expand it out a little bit more so that this could be more applicable for each of you here and maybe take something back to your clinics as well as residency sites. So disclaimer, no financial disclosures. I'm not paid to be here, just like sharing. And these are my experiences. I highly encourage you to go out and make your own. So here's our agenda. We'll first talk a little bit about social media. We'll take a step back and talk about that first before we get into the One Word for Family Medicine project. After that, we'll go on to a couple other examples that might give you guys some ideas to take back to your own sites. We'll go with some best practices, a few more resources, and then we'll open up for questions. I want to make this an open discussion for everybody. So background, how many people here, just with the raise of hands, has a social media page, either on Facebook, on Twitter, anywhere? So a good number of us. Okay. So out of all those people who raised their hand, or anyone who has internet, I should say, 73%, so almost 3 out of 4 people do have some sort of social media page that they update. And what do we mean by social media, or SOME, S-O-M-E for short? So social media is basically an internet-based application or platform where users can exchange and update data, right? But we can go beyond just having fun with this. We can actually implement it within our jobs, within teaching, within recruiting, and I will show you some of the effective ways that I have done that over the last several years. Also, if we're on social media, our patients are also there, right? So a lot of the feedback I've gotten is, well, why do we need to contact them via social media? Well, if they're on social media and they're listening to other people, how many people have seen a bad source of medical information, or they brought it into your clinic, say, doctor, what do you think about this? So we need to be the good source of medical information on social media so that we can combat that and make sure that our patients are getting the right information. So a little bit of background. This is me personally. I did residency in North Carolina, USA. It's a 3-year residency. During my 2nd year, our entire residency, which is the largest Army residency in the country with 30 resident location, only had 2 scholarly activities. And as you know, scholarly activity is one of the foundations and bases of medical education. So how is it that 30 residents, in addition to our staff that we had, only had 2 that year? We weren't meeting the standard. So I was still a resident, and my second going to 3rd year, I said, there's something we got to do about this. So I actually took that as a project initiative in my last year of residency to take charge of that program and transition it from a mandate into something where residents were actually involved and empowered to make decisions about research that they were interested in. By doing that, we were able to go from 2 publications to 6 in 1 year. It's a pretty good jump. And then from 3 presentations at a conference like this to over 28. So we had a large jump there, and this change was recognized by our Army Surgeon General, who's the highest military medical professional within the Army. You can see the letter that she sent there. I was quite surprised to get that, but it was very nice to see that these changes are actually being effective and noticed at the highest levels. Afterwards, I went on to a non-academic clinic setting where the interest was getting patients in and out and just just doing your job. There was zero focus on research, but I found that it was actually something I really enjoyed. On top of it, I found that making processes and improving those processes led to better patient outcomes, led to better staff experiences for ourselves as well as my nursing team, and less burnout. So it was actually applicable to the clinical setting as well, beyond the educational setting. But because there was not that great interest within my work organization, I said, how can I reach out? And it popped on me, social media. So I took that strategy that I had in residency, where I empowered and looked for a really strong team and spread that out, not only within the nation, but around the entire world. So by doing that, I was able to replicate what I had done in our residency. The first project I did that with was called One Word for Family Medicine. This initiated just kind of actually by accident. At the end of 2014, my wife was about 40 weeks pregnant with our second baby, so I was supposed to give a talk and I couldn't go in person because I wanted to make sure I was there to see that my daughter was born. However, we were able to engage at the AAFP, the American Academy of Family Physicians, through social media. And I sent out a simple question, just out of curiosity: what does it mean to you to be a family physician, in one word? So people, I just threw that out there. People actually started responding by the dozens, then by the hundreds. And I said, wow, this is actually something that people want to share, why they really love family medicine. So I took that from within the US, and then I started looking and seeing what is family medicine and what is general practice, or whatever you call it in your country, because it is different in every country. What does that mean to you as well as your community? So at this point, now 3 years later, we've been in over 100 countries. We've gotten over 250,000 responses from family physicians and general practitioners around the world. And much of these we were able to take and do qualitative research and see what sort of things are aligned and focused with both our pillars within family medicine, as well as what our patients are appreciating, as well as what our residents are learning as well. So this has received international recognition on a few levels, both from, it was selected as the Internet Project of the Month last year by Scribble Mass, because we were taking these images as well as marking all over the world where we have been. Also, Wonca, the World Organization of Family Doctors, who will have their meeting here next year, as you're aware, also recognized it and used that as their primary way to celebrate World Family Doctor Day, which is May 19th of every year. So these, I could talk about this, but I'd rather you see exactly what I'm talking about. So we've been over 105 countries at this point, and you see Korea is all over here, and still continuing on. It's slowed down a little bit, but as family medicine is becoming more recognized in developing countries, we're also including those to give them a strong support system, as well as an identity of what a family physician is and should be. So here's just a couple of the examples in German, and from Bolivia and Spanish, Greece, Turkey, Venezuela, Argentina, India, Norway, Puerto Rico, Portugal, Denmark, just among a few. So I did mention forming a good team, forming a support system. For me, that was visualized initially in 2013 when I went to the Wonca, and I highly recommend you go to the Wonca World Conference here next year. I went to my initial Wonca conference in 2013 in Prague. I went, one, to get a new experience, two, to do a little traveling, and to learn something new. And boy, did I learn something new. Within Europe, they had the first young doctors movement called Vasco da Gama. And each region in Wonca, there's 7, has their own. However, at that time, 2013, there was no such thing within North America. So we had a really strong AAFP in the US, a really strong Canadian system, a pretty strong Caribbean system, but we didn't have anything bringing us together at all. And we didn't have any international representation beyond that. So over that next year, I worked together with all 3 colleges between Canada, US, and the Caribbean, because all the Caribbean works together. And we developed Polaris, which is our new and future family physician movement. So this serves as a platform for leadership, research, exchanges, best practices for those in Canada, US, and Caribbean. And we work together in order to, one, amplify our voice on the world stage, as well as learn from each other and be a support network within our daily lives. So I'll actually be going to Montreal here next month for our executive meeting there, so that we can see how we can better engage and continue to grow what we've started over the last couple of years. So we are the newest young doctors movement. However, by far we've had, in my opinion, the most output as far as publications and getting people actually involved. I think I hit everything on there. How many people have been in a balance group or knows what balance is by raising hands? Nobody? Okay, that's not a problem. So a balance group is basically a group of health professionals that traditionally meet in person, like we're doing here, but they meet in a circle, about 8 to 12, and they discuss difficult cases. It is not to find a correct answer. It is not to point fingers and say you did this right or wrong. However, it is to take a deeper look into why we may react the way we do to a certain type of patient, or why a patient may have reacted the way he or she did. We may have done something wrong or something that we are unaware of. And I can tell you, here in Korea, I have done things unintentionally, and when people bring it to my attention, well, no one told me that. It makes sense. So it's opening our minds beyond our baseline knowledge. So traditionally, like I said, it's within a room. We did this within our residency, so I had a little bit of experience. But again, at my next duty location, I didn't have the opportunity to do this in person, so I reached out to social media. Wrote an email to, actually, I worked with a colleague, and we wrote emails to the International Balance Federation as well as the American Balance Society. And they said, yeah, this is a great idea. We'd love to support this. So we actually worked with Don Neese, who's the president of the International Balance Federation. He's also a family physician out of Colorado. And we got a group together from all over the world, as you can see. And that's us in Korea as well. So it was quite interesting trying to hook up the time zones, but we were able to find a good time every month that worked. And this had been going on for 3 years as of last month. So we wanted to do a pilot to see if this was even possible. There, in the literature, there were virtual groups within the same kind of country or region. There are also some evidence of using audio or visual, but there's nothing like this with a multi-centered, multicultural virtual balancing group. So this is the first of its kind, and we started with family medicine, right? So about a year into it, we saw, hey, this is pretty successful, and we were getting the same outcomes that we got in person. So Dr. Neese, the president of the International Balance Federation, said, Kyle, you know what? I think you just showed us the future of balance. And I was like, wow, I wasn't trying to do that, but just something simple as doing this via social media had really opened up the eyes, not only for me, but in other specialties as well. So behavioral health, rural medicine, they can all take advantage of this and improve not only their understanding of themselves, their patients, but these type of meetings are also associated with decreased burnout, improved outcomes and happiness at work for both the patients as well as the physicians themselves. But what other things can we do on social media? So one of the biggest conferences, and definitely the biggest conference around medicine and social media is from Stanford, and I'm sure you've heard of Stanford University, but they have the MedX conference every year, and there's it's physically attended by tens of thousands of people, and then with the addition of the online presence, I don't even know how many, but it's ridiculously large. And so they really advocate using technology as well as social media to improve medicine from both the patient's perspective as well as the doctor's perspective. And I really love that they get the patients involved in the conferences as well, because they are part of our medical team, right? So a lot of these outcomes depend on them, so they should be involved in the decision making as well as giving us new ideas from their perspective. Like, amazing, yes, of course, how come we didn't think of that earlier? They also, along with this, have a international social media competition. So the last 2 years, we've entered, we didn't enter this year just because of too many things going on, but the last 2 years we entered with family physicians from 5 different continents, and we were finalists in the top 16 around the entire world, 2 years running, and both of those led to a publication. I really like the second one, which was looking, so the first one, we'll just hit them both. The first one was looking at social media hashtags as well as online sources, and how do we know, and basically the question was, how do we know which ones to look at? There's so many out there, right? So we actually created the first impact factor for social media hashtags and sites as well as a pilot to show that that can actually be done. The following year, we looked at patient understanding. So in our country, in my country, the U.S., the average reading ability is between the 6th and 8th grade. So that's about 9 to 11 years old schooling level. So the recommendations for medical literature is to actually be written at that level in English. And then if you go on to social media, we're talking about people who use English as a second or third or fourth language, like many people in this room as well. So we need to make sure we have it at a level that people can understand. So we looked at that, and we actually compared online medical posts to what the recommendations were. And this was also based on another study I did within our hospital that showed that written documentation is written at way too high levels. So I was curious to see if social media publications were at similar levels. So those written levels at my hospital was at about 11th grade. So again, 6th to 8th was recommended. So about 3 years higher than it should have been. Social media was still higher, but it was about 9th grade. So actually social media is a touch easier to understand for the patient. So we just need to keep that in mind just in general. If you're writing online, email, wherever it may be, if it's going out to the patients, we need to be cognizant of their English capabilities. I don't think this is connected, but what this is, yeah, that's fine. So I have a video here, and I'll just paraphrase what they're going to say. There are about a dozen family physicians from around the world, every continent except for Antarctica, of course, telling about their experience with social media online and using it in family medicine. So there are physicians that use it for to improve their connection with rural health because they're isolated in a rural community. There are those, so Joy from Kenya, for example. There are those who use it for support groups for women in violence as well, so gender violence. So they find support groups that way. There are others who use it for research collaborations, still others who share best practices, and others who want to improve their medical English or Spanish or whatever language they're trying to learn. So social media is different for every single one of you, but you need to use it to make your practice better. Wrong way. But yeah, because there's so many out there, right? Which ones do you use? So my recommendation, here are my short list of best practices. So create your own personal brand. My interest within family medicine is different than Dr. Suniega's, different than each one of yours. So you need to find how you can connect with your patients the best, be it Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, whatever it may be. That is up to you to figure that out. So for me personally, it's for patient and colleague contact, it's either Facebook and Twitter, and then if I'm for research specifically, it's called something called academia.edu, which I will talk on the next slide. Also, because a lot of interactions occur online, you can put if you do use Twitter or Facebook, you can use your hashtag, just add it on in your Twitter handle. And then if you do have a hashtag, you can add that as well. And then people can see that as well, and then just add you to their social media profile right there. And then bam, you don't have to share a card, you're connected via social media. Also, I know some people just keep adding profiles, and it gets time consuming. There are ways to link them, so just look into those different methods and then just keep updating every single year. So if you can link those where you can just make one update and it goes out to your multiple profiles, you just saved yourself a lot of time. And then make social media work for you. So we discussed some methods, but one specific method I enjoy is a site called academia.edu. There's another one called research.net. And they are specific social media sites for researchers, all categories, but you can tag specifically what you're interested in. So I like this site, for example, because it has evidence-based improvement for those who put their research. For example, I put my research on this site, and then it is boosted 69% as far as being cited in other studies. So when my studies are cited in other studies, that shows that my work is making a difference. It's also connecting me to other colleagues as well. So it's one of the reasons I really like using social media as well in the research realm. Other resources. So there's one of the other things I do is run the social media network for GPs/family physicians, and we highlight work around the world that family physicians are doing. We try to highlight someone every week when possible. And then we also take all the initiatives that are related to Wonca or Wonca Young Doctor Movements, and we have them all on this same site so that they're all there available for you. One of the big questions we had were, where can you find evidence on using social media within family medicine? Well, we added that here, so all the work that's being done, we've added it there so you can see over the last several years what sort of topics have been touched, as well as what sort of things we've collaborated on. So I really like that. You can just Google it and it's there. Wonca Polaris, again, that is specific to North America, but each region has its own Young Doctors movement. I'm again the chair, the president right now. I will be finishing up my term here in the new year, but I hope to still be very active in Wonca as well as with family physicians here in Korea during my last year here. And the last thing, for those who haven't used social media or don't even know where to start, I really enjoyed this Vasco da Gama, which is the Young Doctors movement in Europe. They actually made a how-to for different levels. They call it the Vasco da Gama Compass that to help guide their way. So it has from very beginners to intermediate to even more advanced social media users, and guides to how to better implement that into your education as well as daily practice in clinics as well. So just using social media, it's not going to change anything, but it's a great platform to help you change the world. And I would like to open up for questions now at this time, and I also have a little gift for you all for the One Word for Family Medicine Korea.
Yeah. Is there any question or comments from floor? And he brought a special present. So it's for all of you.
Please don't be shy.
I think you can speak in Korean, even though I'm not good at English too, but I'm not good at English either, but I can.
So I have one question.
Yes.
Can I speak here or the area?
Please use the mic and get in the floor.
very nice to hear your wonderful work over your years. But I was wondering that there were so many residents when you're in the residency, but I guess the atmosphere of your department was not so familiar with the researches or anything else than clinical practice. So how was your colleagues? How was your colleague residents? How did they feel about you pushing forward to researches?
Great question, thank you. So one of the hardest areas is to change the culture of your setting. The culture of research is difficult to implement. So we did not have that when we first got there. One of the big issues in the military medicine programs is that our faculty change every 2, 3, 4 years. On top of that, they can get deployed to Afghanistan, other locations, even while they're there. So it's very difficult to form a bond in order to get trust, as well as teaching within the research realm and investigatory realm. So that was the most difficult part to broach. So as the resident, I knew I wasn't going to move, and I knew that I wasn't going to be deployed to Afghanistan. So that allowed for the continuity aspect. There was a little bit of resistance from a couple of people, but by bringing in a team of motivated individuals, it allowed me to first improve and change upon their mindsets. And then they took that and it spread out little by little, so that we went from, oh, we have to do research, to actually making it a competition where people were comparing how many presentations they have done, how many publications they had. So we had actually a point system, and then the person with the most points at the end of the year actually got an award, got a military medal for achievement. So as you know, if you turn anything into a competition, it tends to make it, for doctors at least with type A personalities, it was quite successful, to the point we went from last to the very top within a year. So that's continued on, and the real thing that has had to be maintained is that changing culture, because with the people constantly leaving, it's easy to get back into complacency.
Is there any more question on the floor? Please introduce yourself first.
I'm Professor Kang from India University. Thank you for your excellent lecture. I have two questions. First one is, how many countries join your Polaris? And is there any age limitation to join Polaris?
Roger. So Polaris specifically is within North America. So we have over 30 countries and territories between Canada all the way through the entire Caribbean, as well as English-speaking South America, so Suriname, Guyana, French Guyana as well. Korea falls into a similar organization called the Rajiv Kumar organization and movement, and that's from actually all the way Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, China, all the way over to and including Southeast Asia, so all the way to Myanmar. So they will be, as part of next year's conference here, hosting the young doctors portion, and I definitely hope to see and engage Korean young physicians, residents, try to get them involved. As far as age limits, those specifically are for the younger generations. However, I didn't mention up here because it wasn't related to social media as much. There is something called Aspire, and that is to basically help develop the bedrock leadership skills for family physicians. So it has been approved by Wonca, and we're in a pilot stage right now. So that's something that I developed because leadership to me is very important, not only as an individual, but as a specialty. Family medicine should have, in my opinion, a primary role within medicine. So that would be, sir, where you can very happily get involved as a mentor, trying to improve our next generation. So I can talk to you a little more offline on that, sir.
Yes. Any more questions? I searched about you on the internet, and I saw your very impressive CV, and also I recognize that you are the vice chief on the Wonca Global Interesting Group.
For the AAFP Global Health.
Global Health. Yeah.
Roger.
Can you introduce about AAFP Global Health?
Yes. So thank you for asking. So the American Academy of Family Physicians has different areas of interest within the organization, and so I'm heavily involved with the Global Health member interest group. Been the vice president for the last few years now. We have a very strong global presence, not only within the AAFP, but around the world. I don't know if there's a similar trend here, but medical students will request more and more over the last years to do international rotations. Is that something similar here in Korea? Yeah. So in the U.S., for example, people will want to go to residencies or join specialties that have international opportunities, either to help volunteer work or to go for best practices to learn to get experience. So that's part of where this has come from. And then my involvement through Wonca has also really helped me unite the World Organization of Family Physicians. That was my national college of AAFP, so that's been really nice on my end. AAFP also has an annual global health conference that they just had last month, and that's a great place to meet like-minded individuals in person for those who want to attend those conferences, and they have continued medical education credits as well. The Canadians have a very similar organization as well, and that is co-located, their conference is co-located with their annual conference that's coming up in November. Believe it or not, Canada actually has the largest family medicine conference by attendance in the world, which I did not expect to hear that, but they very heavily focus on family medicine, unlike the U.S., and I really like that because they spend a lot less money per individual and get better outcomes than my country does, unfortunately for my country. But because of my work with the Canadians, I can see that, you know, there's more than one right answer, and you know what, there may even be a better answer than what we're currently doing. So by keeping our eyes open and learning from others continually, we can improve ourselves and what our patients receive and the outcomes they have.
Thank you. Yes, it's time for us to close this session. And in closing, I'd like to thank Dr. Hildegard and all participants on the floor for a very informative, provocative, and stimulating session. Thank you very much. 우리 닥터 패드백 선생님이 가져오신 직접 만들어 오신 그 스페셜 기프트가 있습니다. 여기 참석해 주신 여러분들 위한 거거든요. 하나씩 여기 가져가시면 좋겠습니다.